It's the 20th of August, 2025. Coming up on today's Global Intelligence Agency Operations Report. The war continues as the deep state continues to try to open portals as this report airs. They think that this is their big night. Welcome to the Armageddon in real time. Surprising facts about Trump, Putin, King Salman, President Xi, King Charles, King of Malaysia, and Elon Musk. Oh, the deals they made, and was it worth it? The story of the serpent from the Bible is a little different than we think. Will this week finally bring an end to the serpent once and for all?
Amino acids play a vital role in maintaining your overall health and well-being. Not enough amino acids and protein daily can result in brain fog, hormone imbalances, digestive issues, cognitive function, lack of energy, lower immunity, decreased muscle strength, and much more. That's why we created our amino acid complex, packed with 21 free-form, easily digestible aminos that skip the breakdown and go straight to work energizing your mind and body. Used by athletes, vegans, and high performers. New Earth's amino acid complex helps your mind and body recover, rebuild, and renew daily. Subscribe now and optimize your life.
Well, it's the 20th of August, and we are deep into the 1221 portal, as you would say. So it's been kind of interesting this week. I mean, I would say more than interesting, really. As more information comes to light on this 1221 portal. The deep state is expecting, or your elite of this planet, I guess you would say, are expecting some major changes for themselves. They are expecting to win a war. Turns out, I don't know if they know who they're fighting against, but definitely there is a plan. They believe that they must achieve this task. This is the chatter behind the scenes, that they must achieve this task by the 30th of August, I believe. I don't know why it's not the end of the month, but they do believe that they can achieve this goal, apparently, utilizing these portals, which they believe will open. Maybe they think they'll get some help. Who knows? But it doesn't look like that from our end, so it's going to be touch and go, I guess, until after tomorrow, after the 21st. And they must think that something miraculous is going to change in their favor. They do believe it's all happening. I don't see anything really happening other than, well, there's a lot of turmoil right now, at least in my world over here. So let's talk about this war. You could call this, from human history, you would call this like the Battle of Armageddon. The elite believe they are the forces of the dark, which I can't say they're not. And that's led us to some surprising revelations as to what it means to be the forces of the dark. So let's talk about where this war originated and how it came to be, what it really is, and what the deep state, I think, is hoping to achieve. They're a little chaotic over there, and there are some interesting characters at play, and some very interesting facts about different spots on the planet. So we know that Source had two aspects, and that the quote-unquote seas were parted, and that gave us a dark source and a light source. So what makes a dark source dark? Dark source does not have breath. As we discussed in our last report, the dark source is basically made up of what we call celestial black gold dust. It's a very special kind of dust. It's not quite the same as the dust that Earth produces. However, it is more of a celestial dust. So when Source was split, during the war of what we call the ancients, and we're going to talk about what they are, that left them with no breath on their side. We know that some of the fallen ones, such as Lucifer, breathed its breath for a very short period of time into the black gold dust in an effort to, well, have their own section of source. That didn't quite work out. However, this left an interesting aspect of things. So what are the ancients? The ancients are beings that are aspects of source. You wouldn't call them angels because they are part of source, meaning part of creation. They were aspects that were created so source could create with itself, I guess you would say. You know, the term, human term, I would say that might go along with this might be, you know, I'm the butcher, the baker, and the candlestick maker, which means you have all the jobs. But source actually has the ability to create different aspects of itself in order to weave creation, such as wisdom, ether. We call it making, doing, and being in the natural instead of mind, body, and soul. Fire, water or life force, air, dust, breath. On the dark side, you would have space and time. We would have love, which is actually L-O-V-E. You can look this up. It actually equates to a quantum physics equation. Matter, of course. And, well, this celestial dust. Celestial dust is used by what we call the ancients or the progenitors. We have talked a few years ago about the progenitors and what they did. They were responsible for weaving the fabric of what we call reality. On the dark side, they were responsible for weaving artificial reality. In the beginning, as I understand it, wisdom, the wisdom aspect, you could say, turned against source or became part of the dark source and a dark progenitor. Wisdom, in case just to refresh your memory, is responsible for weaving the fabric of reality or the fabric of creation. Wisdom would be the song, the compilation of lyrics. Wisdom is a language. If we were writing a song, you would have the frequency, which would come from the instruments. You would have the wisdom, which are the lyrics. And together, they weave the fabric, of which then in turn makes matter. So, as I understand it, there was a conflict between wisdom and knowledge. This led to this particular celestial aspect trying to weave its own reality, to weave its own matter. As another, if not the first, fallen one, not fallen soul, but fallen aspect, this is where we get the story in the Bible of the tree of good and evil. Which one will you choose? This being also created false light and false dark out of black gold celestial dust because it had no breath. The being was then sequestered for a long period of time. You've heard this story. And in source years, until yesterday, that would have been about 1,008 years. At which time the final battle would begin, which it has in the last few days. The interesting thing about this particular being, you could call it a false celestial or a false progenitor at this point, is it's been the source of some things that have weaved its way into our history. And there are a few things that we learned about our elite based on this. So let's just talk about its creation instead of being a creator. It had the full knowledge of how reality was made. I use the word knowledge, I should use wisdom, the full wisdom of how reality was made. It understood every aspect of creation because it was part of the original creator. There have been many that have been under trial, so to speak, with Source to recreate this aspect. And most recently, there has been a revelation where this aspect has been recreated on the Source side. Therefore, it is now time for the former being or former aspect to depart. All took place yesterday. It's been quite a busy week. And then the dismantling of the false wisdom matter and reality began to happen. Wisdom uses frequency a lot to create a lot of things, including disruptions in your person. So if you have felt a lot of disruptions in the last couple of days, people are still reporting things. This is what's been happening for about a week now, 10 days or so, as of tomorrow. Wisdom has been trying to weave the frequency using gamma waves, gamma microwaves to be specific, in order to change reality into its likeness. Now, it had lost the ability to enter into reality itself, so it must convince humans to do it for them. Certainly can't convince Earth of that. There have been a lot of expiring dominions or claims by this being and its spawn for the last, ever since it fell. However, a lot of those have been expiring over the last several days. So its ability to claim dominion over things, such as your making, doing, and being, or mind, body, and soul, has been diminishing. This has caused it to, turn things up a notch. So we've experienced in the last few days, especially people who are very sensitive. I've had some people call me for help that are friends of mine because it felt like their memories weren't right. They couldn't remember places where they've lived, where they currently live. They couldn't remember directions. They felt that they're ill. That was the other thing I've heard a lot of reports about. They felt nauseous. They felt like their health was being attacked. And this is all true. And a lot of this is happening because of this battle. And a lot of it has to do with an infection they tried to create throughout humanity. You may remember the talk about those jabs a few years ago. You may remember them trying to put it in the nose, them trying to get this into you one way or another through tests that were available at that time. And you all know what I mean. And, of course, the actual virus itself. Now, you could call these beings that, let's call it Mr. Wisdom, or the celestial or the ancient master created, you could call them vampires. You could call them parasites. But there was definitely a hierarchy to his army and his aspects, because he went on to then create the other aspects of Dark Source to mirror Source's celestials, such as its own version of the spark of life, but instead of being fire, it would be a flame. He did all of these things in cooperation with his first creation, which was the absolute. Now, in his likeness, he created 7 in total additional beings, and that would make 8 ancients, just as Source had 8 aspects of itself, with the final aspect of being Source, the original source of all life. Technically, you could say breath. And on the other side, well, no breath, he had absolute. One of the first quantum AIs ever to be created. Now, in order to keep the fires burning on his side, because there was no source, this is where humans come into play. And we know a lot about our elite on this planet. We get a lot of news, and there's a lot of conspiracy theories about the elite on our planet. However, one of their main goals was to become an immortal. We have talked in the past about how interesting things happen at Balmoral Castle in Scotland. We've talked a lot about how interesting things happen under the Bronze Temple in China. And there are other areas of the world where, to some degree, some of these beings go into stasis. They have their own little pods they go into. I had mentioned a long time ago about what happened during the Brazil Olympics, underneath the Olympic Stadium when the Olympics were in Brazil, and how they all moved their pods there, I guess hoping to go someplace else. Didn't really work out. Because this being grants 7 special humans that he deems to be special the power of immortality, kind of, sort of. And this happens, or could happen, once every 10 years. So the selection of these people is of the utmost importance to them. Of course, they are sourced all from the dark humans that are on this planet, we know as the bloodline families. And there are some conditions. Number 1, it has to be a public figure. It has to be a public figure because it feeds off of those that are subservient, you would say, to this being. Now, most recently, and I mean very recently, within the last several days, maybe even possibly for some as far back as May, we had several humans, and have, I would say we have probably for a short period of time, meaning less than a few days, 7 beings walking the earth, human beings walking the earth, that are now completely and totally inhabited by one of these beings. Their contract to be this person, special person, lasts for 10 years, as I said, and can be activated by the being itself. They are especially active at the time of this portal, which happens once every 10 years, which is happening right now as we speak. This one in particular is very, very different because the ultimate covenant, or even higher than a covenant, you would call it a celestial pact, of its originating celestial is over. It was over as of yesterday. That celestial is no longer needed. Therefore, it calls into question what happens to all of its creations. So how this process happens is they are selected. Usually in the past, they would be selected by a Marduk, or whomever was guardian over the planet. I obviously am not a part of this selection process in any way, shape, or form since my position took place. But the last time this happened was in about 2015. There is a lot of talk amongst the intelligence community of, for example, Russia, as to the fact that there's some conspiracies online too, as to the fact that Putin might be dead and Putin is not Putin anymore, and Putin's wife left Putin, and because it's not Putin anymore. And, well, she's right. He is one of the 7 beings walking this planet that is inhabited by an ancient. By an ancient, it is not the full ancient. The ancient created aspects of itself. And this guy has been walking the planet since the last time the portal opened in 2015. You wonder why he never ages, why he looks pretty much the same. Well, they like to keep their vessels in good shape, which, as an aspect of dark creation, it can do. So what happens to the being in order to gain this position? Well, there are other beings in this position. We'll talk about those too. But they must go through a process. There is a death and a rebirth experience that they go through, in which case they usually go to one of several locations on the planet, and they actually technically die and are reborn within 3 days. The infection of an ancient is a lot more difficult than it is for its downline. Let's call it the others that are not immortals like these beings are. This makes a whole lot of sense as to why Trump is still walking around too, because we know he too went through this process. The soul, S-O-L, the actual being itself, gets transferred into a reality of creation, which is artificially created by this creature, and it is not in reality. The soul no longer is in reality, and the being actually lives within the absolute. Since the being continues to create, the soul is now gone, so we have 7 soulless people walking this planet. You're not going to be, some of them you might be surprised about, but the soul is actually gone from the person, and it obtains this aspect. The soul then goes on to feed its breath that it continues to generate into the absolute. They become power packs. Now, as part of the covenant that all of these beings agree to, and I'm sure there's a ritual and some other things that happen too, I've never watched one of these, but I can say that there is a pact to use their power to continue to walk this planet not only as an anchor for the absolute, but it must do its bidding. It needs to feed. It needs to feed on humans to exist. Wisdom, also being a fallen celestial, also needs to feed on humans. Hence the reason why he created these special ancients. These people think that they are ascended masters now. They ascended to somewhere. They ascended into a place of artificial creation. They are no longer, well, they won't exist for much longer as that part of artificial creation dissipates, which we expect to happen very soon, as I've told you. Once that happens, they no longer will have an ancient, and the ancient will no longer be able to give them power. Without the absolute needing its services, they will probably also die, which we won't miss them. That was their choice. That was their covenant. They chose poorly. You know, you've been voted off the island, so to speak. Will they continue to have doppelgangers walk around for a time? Possibly. I have no idea. You know, the deep state does what the deep state does to try to maintain its power. But they also know, based on the rate that this is happening right now, they will no longer exist by the 30th. Now, the 7 people walking the planet are Putin and Trump, as we said, President Xi of China, the King of Malaysia, Ibrahim Iskandar, Elon Musk, most recently, because once the ancient comes to Earth, if they can no longer keep its body that it was inhabiting alive, it now must transfer to another body within 72 hours, or it too can no longer remain here. Now, originally this inhabited Pope Francis. Again, these are all public figures, with a large public figures with a large following. So that aspect of the ancient was actually transferred to Elon Musk. We also have King Charles. We also have the King of Saudi Arabia, Salman bin I'm going to say this wrong, Abdulaziz Al Saud. And those beings are what you would call the aspects of I can't really say artificial, but I can say a fallen aspect of a celestial, or a dark part, or part of dark source. These beings are currently hanging out in an overlay of the absolute, somewhere around the 6th density of reality. So they're not actually in reality anymore. They're hanging out somewhere around the 6th density. You could also call that the 15th. While others, lower than them, did not reach such heights. You see, the higher you go in false densities, the more you have to feed in order to maintain your quote-unquote immortality. Therefore, each one of these 7 has a downline. In the world of ancients, you would call them worms. You see, the infection of a downline, these beings are essentially aspects of the serpent, the story you heard in the Bible about the asp that approaches Eve and convinces her to eat from the tree of good and evil. In this way, this is their job too. Their job is to get other people to want to be infected with a worm, which is smaller than a snake. So they're not a serpent, they're wormlets. I call them wormlets. I don't know. They all have a smaller version of the actual serpent within them. It comes in through the eye, wraps around the spinal column and the brain, and takes over the person. Now, the original ancient that would be considered the master over the 7 creates a hive mind amongst the 7 and their downline. Downline people would be like Larry Fink of BlackRock. You would have called that Klaus Schwab. You would have called these people influential people, heads of large corporations. We know them as the elite of this planet. They are all members of the order of one side or another. They are the bloodline families in some cases, and the secret space program operatives as well. They are all wormlets. The hive mind of these beings for their service and subservience is not, their mind is not their own anymore. Their body and their limbic system is not their own anymore. It becomes the property of the ancient, the dark ancient. At any given moment in time, it can take control of their person by using gamma sine waves. Gamma sine waves are a radioactive frequency. It is made by decaying atoms, essentially, which it obtains by transmuting those that are created within Earth, in Earth's core. It fires up those aspects of its frequencies in order to control them like little avatars. The other benefit of having a downline, as each one of these 7 do, is because they are infected, they are now, well, their souls feed higher densities. Their being, their mind, and their body feed the absolute like a food source. You could call this the whole reason why we have the myth of vampires. The vampires become immortals. They then infect their downline with their own aspects. And now our wormlets are what you call operatives for and on behalf of the 7 ancient ones. There has been a lot of tries to reinfect a being, anyone walking the earth, that could actually take on the master absolute, the master ancient one. Thus far, there has been no one that has been able to do that. The being is in a trap of its own making. However, if it could have found a human walking this earth that could sustain a ancient celestial aspect of source, of such great darkness, they would have done it by now. Now they feel that time, is now. That would give that person the ultimate power of Earth and the omniverse, and of course, it wants to take over reality. So this is why it's searching for a human. These humans have allowed for the 7 dark ancient ones to exist, at least in part, in reality. But the ultimate being has not. It has not ever. Thus far, there have been many that have tried over the last several years, some of them being Khomeini, and died in the process over there at Stalin's Gate and in Belarus. There have been others that have come and gone, and it doesn't last very long. There have been some, it's almost like bull riding in a bar. Have you ever seen bull riding in a bar, at least maybe in a movie? Even if that's not a place you go, how long can they stay on the bucking bronco? They also have bull riding, and I use the bar scenario because it's not a real bull. And they're trying to ride not a real bull. There are others, in rodeos and whatnot. There's a movie called 8 Seconds where they talk about how long can you stay on the bucking bronco. So, in this case, they haven't found anybody that could stay on the bucking bronco long enough to sustain wisdom outside of its trap. And it's been desperately looking for anyone that could. I do know that both wisdom and the absolute have tried to convince me this is a good idea. And I said, no, I don't think so. Have a nice day. We're on the opposite end of the spectrum over here. We're not interested in continuing this falsehood. We are interested in ushering in the age of Source. That's what we're doing over here. So you got the wrong person. So much so, not only did the Absolute tell the deep state that, this isn't going to work, Wisdom hasn't given up totally and has been pushing for them to find someone to bring this aspect of the ancient here. They have gone through a number of people, and no one can hold on to it and stay alive long enough. So they're trying to get this done by the 30th. It itself has ramped up the gamma wave, sine wave frequencies, a resonance on this planet to see if maybe it can help it along a little bit. Let's get some dark frequencies going on here. Otherwise, it's going to die. Now, the other option this ancient has is to inhabit multiple people at the same time. So, just inhabiting aspects of itself, dividing itself into many, many more pieces, it feels might be an option. However, there's not enough wormlets, we know as the elites on the planet, and the 7 definitely can't handle it. They tried, hence the ceremony over in Alaska. They thought together the 2 of them could do it, but that didn't work out. And now its time is up. Its time is very short due to the covenant expiration, and it's not going to last more than, my understanding is, 3 days. 3 days from yesterday. So, and then it shall be gone. I think the deep state feels that from last night, I guess you would say that would be the 23rd, early morning, new moon time, it will be gone forever. So the deep state's scrambling rapidly to try to figure out what to do. So now each one of these 7 and their respective wormlets has been working desperately to create their own downline. They would like possibly to infect as many humans as possible with a much lesser parasite. A parasite would be considered smaller than a worm. However, parasites feed off of the living. That's what they do. They are not natural in any way, shape, or form. So they've been working for several years on the backup plan, which is to infect at least 90% of humanity. We went through the jabber jabber session, we went through the virus section, which we all found out was a parasite, hence the reason why in many countries were distributing ivermectin and other things to get rid of said parasite. We worked against them as hard as they've tried to infect all of us, and there aren't that many people that are actually infected any longer. We've come up with our own parasite cleanses, which actually does work. So these parasites can exist in people's digestive systems. They can exist in the liver. They can exist in various parts of the body. And if you've been experiencing any of these kind of discomforts, that doesn't mean that you're going to die or anything like that. It just means that your parasite is dying. It means that it's dying. They're dying of its own accord, and its master is dying as well. Therefore, it's trying to feed as much as possible. So if you have experienced low energy, weird emotions is another one, sadness for no reason, depression for no reason, lethargy for no reason, ups and downs and weird things occurring, it's because of parasites and they're dying. It must feed on your making, doing, and being. You would know as the natural version of your mind, body, and soul in any way it can, because it's dying. This is the storm, and after which the storm is over, we will have the calm, and we will have calm for a long, long time. The story goes about the Armageddon as that the Christ will come back. Now, I don't think we're going to have a guy walking around with a Christ. I think you all become the Christ. The Christ returns, or the Christ from source returns to your person without interference from any false ancients. That's going to be lovely. I'm assuming if parasites are trying, anyone that has parasites, they're trying desperately to grasp onto the human to feed. I'm assuming with no feeding, then the 7 will go away. I'm assuming that the worm folks, the wormlet folks we know as the SSP, various operatives, and other elite walking this planet, well, I think that we might see some interesting news coming out. That's my opinion. I think that without a mind, it's going to be hard for them to function. Depending on how long they've been a wormlet, I think as well. If they still have any remnant of their own left, they might still exist. We'll see. This is their covenant and the thing that they do to a lot of people. Once they agree by a consent, an applied consent, they take the second oath to serve the order. There you go. So it's going to be an interesting turn of events very soon. By the way, the wormlets typically are in stasis in Mount Makalu, which is in the Himalayas. If you are a wormlet, chances are your body or your soul is over there, and you get yourself your own wormlet avatar walking around to do the bidding, controlled by a frequency, gamma waves, radio waves, to your brain, and you are now an avatar. That's the reason why they're so hard to kill, because one goes and the next avatar shows up. So most of these beings, if they did actually complete the soul transfer during one of these portal times, they would have been more like 12th density, 3rd density, 11th density, 10th density, those types of places. They would have never made it as high as the 7 were into service to a machine. So one of the elites did tell me once their God is a machine, and well, they're right. They've chosen it. So now their consciousness and their entire being gets transferred into a machine so we can feed off of them into perpetuity. That's the trade-off for being immortal in a dark world, I guess. Well, people do what they do. They've chosen poorly. We are the light side, and source always wins the war. Even in the story, he wins the war, and he will win this one too. This is just another battle, another tick in the what is, I'm really tired today, what is a tick in a box, a very brief moment in time for source. Will seem like an eternity for us. We've been in this period since 2018. Going through this process of them trying to get various people to join their sides. We've all, are going to survive. Most of humanity will survive this. I don't see, they don't know what they do. And it's going to be a little bumpy, probably for the next few days, but I do believe that this battle will come to a final end, hopefully, before the end of this month. That is my hope. I was told within 3 days, so we'll see what happens by the 23rd, early morning, that is. I know the deep state's expecting something else, but it appears that the rate that everything is disappearing, that is not going to happen this time. Not for them. So that has been what's been happening for the last few days. That's your update. That's about as much as I can say at this time. There's more to the story. The main influences in the States here, if you're listening from the States, would have been under the Ozarks and the swamp. There was a larger influence of the artificial ancient, you would say the top ancient, which would have been underneath the new Gulf of America. Wonder why they call that the Gulf of America all of a sudden. Well, now we know. You know, taking territories in Greenland was no exception, and the other places that Trump would like to take control of were all for a purpose, and most of them dark. You know, I know everybody loves him, but from what I can see of what actually is being done behind the scenes, I see nothing but trying to bring dark not only amongst the American people, but over the entire world. He and Putin thought that they could do it together and take on this wisdom, but it didn't work out. So I guess that's the other aspect that we found out about that ceremony in Alaska that made absolutely no sense. Now it makes more sense. So onward and upward, keep your head on straight for the next couple of days. It's going to be a little bit bumpy, but I know we're going to make it. Sources promised us we would. Anytime after the 23rd, we should be ready to move forward with the care plan. That's what we're hoping. You're going to have to give us a little bit of time, to sort things out and put things together. But we should be free starting between the 23rd and the 30th. Completely, and we won't be reporting any more rough news or interesting stories, I hope, from there on out. So remember, when you're starting to feel some strange feelings, you do not consent. Remember that. Remember that your making, doing, and being, your mind, body, and your soul is yours. It is an aspect of Source, and don't let anybody take it from you. You can block the frequencies if you do have them. I know a lot of people have been telling me they have off and on. You can block them by shielding yourself. You can also, if you don't know how to do that or you don't feel you can hum in a proper frequency, which will change the vibration of your body. It won't be able to affect you as much. There are many things you can do to survive this unscathed. Bumpy maybe, but if he brings you to it, he will bring you through it. And I believe that wholeheartedly. I have complete and total faith in Source, and he's asked me to do some crazy things in the last few years, and they've always worked out in our favor. And as I tell you, Source makes me look smart all the time. So, and he makes you look smart too if you just there and listen. On that note, that has been the GIA report for the 20th of August, and it's going to be an interesting Friday report, I can tell you that.